races and Vendee Globes, and the Vendee Globe is the most amazing. It is a solo race, so that's just one person sailing the boats. It's non-stop. They're not allowed to pull into a pit stop into a port anywhere. If they do, they're out of the race. They can anchor and fix their boat, but they can't have people on board. So it is solo, non-stop, and it's around the world. That's 24,000 nautical miles around the world. Okay. The first race was back in 1989-90, and that took just over 109 days for the boat to win that race. So he was at sea on his own, sailing around the world for 109 days. More people have been to space than have raced around this planet of ours in a sailing boat on their own. So that gives you a clue as just how special these kind of people are. And if you were present for the chat that Dee Kafari gave, Dee took part in this race in 2008-9. And so she is one of those very few people who've sailed around the world on her own. She's actually slightly crazy. She's done it 4 times, I think, including 2 in what we call the wrong direction. So Dee is probably up there as the craziest of all those solo skippers. But yeah, more people have been in space than have sailed solo around the world. So in this race, in 2020, 33 skippers started this race. And so far, 8 boats have retired, and 1 of them has sunk. Wow. And that boat that sunk folded in half and sank inside of 4 minutes. The skipper had time to send a distress signal and a text message and jump in his life raft. So that was pretty extreme. So yeah, this is probably the most extreme race in the world. So far in this race, 14 skippers have finished the race. We have a winner, and 11 boats are still racing. One of those boats is about 80 miles from the finish, so he'll be finishing tonight. Yeah, so he's going to be pretty happy. So our winner this year was a Frenchman called Yannick Bestaven. It's always been a Frenchman that's won this race. Brits have come second twice. Yeah, Ellen MacArthur came second in 2002-ish. Then Alex Thompson came second 4 years ago. So yeah, Yannick won in 80 days in this race, which isn't a race record. They probably had one of the fastest boats to do the race. It was actually a bit of a slow race this year, and the weather was the reason for that. So these boats, this is the very first RLymYC 60, or this was an open 60 class it was called, and this is the first one that won the first Vendee Globe back in 1989-1990. And you can see, if you look at this boat, you can see it's a very open deck. It's a very old school design of boat. It almost looks like an old America's Cup yacht. It's got a very tapered stern, and it looks like it'd slide downwind at a very low angle, just slipping down the waves really nicely. But with that big open deck, it would be wet, and that really small cockpit there, it's like a bubble on the boat for the skipper to hide in. It would certainly be very, very wet. So these old boats, they were pretty slow compared to modern boats, and a lot less powerful and a lot less protection for their skippers. So that's one of the first ones. And here we have the mighty Hugo Boss, which unfortunately had to retire from the race. But you can start to see the difference. Now, the one thing that the America's Cup boats have got in common with these boats is we've got foils on them. And you can see this big black curved foil here. And they've got one on each side. And then this here, this pink line underneath the center of the boat is a canting keel. So that keel can move. It's probably, I think they restrict them to 40 degrees in the RLymYC class rules. So it can cant from 40 degrees one side, 40 degrees the other side. So it's got 80 degrees of movement in it. And then the rudder's right at the back. So if I flick on to the next one, this is Charal, one of the pre-race favourites. And you can see this massive foil sticking out of the side of the boat, out of in the air. And then if you look on the other side of the boat, you'll see just under the water, the pink foil there with a tip sticking out. And that's lifting the hull of this boat right out of the water It's not completely airborne, but only the back back quarter of the boat is in the water there. A very little amount of the boat is in the water. And you can see this canting keel just canted off to one side slightly, helping create righting moment for the boat and more power, and also lift. So this is helping the foil lift the front of the boat out of the water. So these boats are really cutting edge. If you think of the America's Cup boat that we'll see later on, the AC35, that's a lot like a Formula One boat. That's the Formula One boat or car of the sailing world. This is like the World Rally Championship car. These boats are built to go out into big seas. They don't always last, as we'll see. You know, a lot of them have breakages, but they're a lot tougher and a lot sturdier than the cup boats. And so they're still foiling and reaching great speeds. This shot here of Chiral, boat's probably doing about 27, 28 knots there. So you can see in these light flat waters, bows right up, the boat's ripping and really ripping along nicely here. So,
Miles,
as I said,
we have
go
a
on,
question.
Yeah.
From Lottie Vinicum. What was the fastest time the race was completed in?
74 days, I think it was.
That's
which was last race. Was it last race? Yeah, last race. Yeah. Armand Leclerc in Banque Populaire. You're testing my knowledge, Lottie. I like this. I'm not looking it up on the internet, I promise. I'm making it all up as I go. So yeah, it was Armand Leclerc and on Banque Populaire, which was a wicked fast boat. And I had the pleasure of being able to go sailing with him on that for a few times. And yeah, I think we hit 27, 28 knots on the thing, just quite comfortably sitting there. And you're kind of sitting around just drinking a cup of tea, and the three of you just hanging out in the cockpit thinking, we're having a lovely time. And you look at the boat speed, you're doing 27 knots. It's pretty scary when you think about it. So as I said at the start, to me, this is the most amazing race. It's the best atmosphere of any race in the world. And that's because of the French public. So when this race starts, it starts from a little place called Les Sables d'Olonne. And you get something like 3 million people from the French public turning up to look at this race, to come and look at the boats. Every day, the boats have to be there for 3 weeks before the start of the race. Every day, tens of thousands of people go onto the pontoons and look at the boats. And then you get to the last day before the race, and the public's not allowed on the pontoons. It's just the teams and the technical people, and it's silence. You've gone from being in a football stadium of people and noise to you can hear a pin drop on the pontoon. And it's the most eerie sporting event that I've ever been part of for that. And it's because, as we'll come on to, everybody knows that this is a risky race. It's solo, it's 24,000 miles around the world. Every race somebody retires, every race a boat has a major problem. Somebody might get an injury, somebody might sink, somebody will need rescuing. And it's your competitor that has to rescue you. And so there's this edge about everybody, this silent respect for everybody in the fleet. And I've never seen it in any other fleet in my life. It's not there in the Volvo when we go to the same places. But it is there because you know that that man across the dock, that lady over there, she might have to come and rescue you. You might have to rescue her. And your race, everything you've worked for the last 3 years will be over. But that is the thing that drives this. So the French public love it. The start is televised live after the 1 o'clock news. The start's at 2 minutes past 1, so the news can come on first and introduce it. And then the whole of France stops for it. And it's the headline item on the news every night. It is amazing. So, as I said, getting back to the race, these guys have now been at sea, the ones that are still racing. They've been at sea now. Oh, sorry, I missed this one. Crikey. I put this one in as well just to show you the size of the cockpit now on the modern boats. This is quite an old boat. This boat won in 2008-9. And you can see this doesn't have foils. It has a straight dagger board. And the reason I put this one in, I wanted to show you the extra protection, but also this boat, despite not having foils and being a bit slower, came fourth in this race. And the man who sailed it, Jean Le Cam, yes we can. Jean Le Cam is 61 years old. and this was
Amazing.
his 5th Vendee. So experience in this kind of race really does count for a lot, and I'll come on to him in a minute as well. So as I say, it's 94 days since they started the race. So I'd like you lot to have a little think about what you've been doing for the last 94 days, okay? Because you've probably been eating some delicious food. Probably not having the beers in the background, but you've probably been eating some delicious food. And they are going to have been eating freeze-dried food. So that's food that comes in a bag. You eat it out of the bag, you pour water in it, eat it out of the bag, or eat it out of a dog bowl, and it gives you enough calories to get you through the day. And there's some great freeze-dried foods. I really like freeze-dried, but there's some terrible ones as well. So, you know, they've been living off that for 94 days now. So you'll have been going for your winter walks by the sea down at Tanner's Lane or at Keyhaven. They've been trying to walk around their boats, which when you're doing something like this and you're trying to inspect the furling unit at the front of the boat or check the bow's okay, it's not a nice place to be walking to. I guarantee you lot will have been getting 8 to 10 hours sleep a night. Some of you a bit more, especially during lockdown and when there's no school. These guys have been catnapping, probably 25 minutes every few hours, just try and get the head down. Sometimes they'll get up to 3 hours sleep, but that's pretty rare. And this is the previous race winner, RLymYC. And you can see him here. He's just asleep by his nav computer in his kit, ready to go at any second, just to go and make a change to a sail. Or the autopilot's driving the boat here. So the autopilot drives for about 95% of the time, 98% of the time, something like that. So the guys really don't drive. They don't helm the boats. They don't drive them. They leave that to a computer. What they have to do is react to the sail changes and trim changes. So he's having a little nap here, and all the time you're listening. All the time. It's a different noise on the boat, and that's what will wake you up. Or it's a noise that stops, and that wakes you up. And you think, what's that? What's changed? And so that's why they just get into this catnapping cycle. So I know you've all been catching up with friends on Zoom and doing these talks. And they've been catching up with friends on Zoom as well, although they use satellite communications to be able to talk to the world. And if anybody watched any of Alex Thompson's stuff at the start, before he had to retire, this was during his first repair that he had to do. And there's been some great stuff coming off the boats. I know you'll have all been playing computer games when you're supposed to be doing your homework, your homeschooling. But they don't play computer games. They just spend hours and hours looking at their weather files and using the navigation software to plot their fastest course around the world. So literally probably 3, 4, 5 hours a day at least in front of a computer, which when it's really rough can be a pretty quick way of getting seasick. But yeah, that's what the guys have to do. They have to be navigators, they have to be trimmers, they have to be cooks, they have to be cleaners, they have to be boat fixers. So they're really multi-talented people. And then in the middle of it all, it was Christmas. So you were all celebrating Christmas, having a lovely time with your family around a Christmas tree. And it's a friend of mine, Roman Atanasio, and he's out there in the middle of the Indian Ocean celebrating Christmas. So that was how Roman celebrated. His wife is Sam Davis, who was also in the race, and she was ahead of him at this point. So he celebrated with a present from her, and she had a present from him. And they both had a present from their son Ruben. So they tried to have a bit of fun with it all. So that was kind of a little introduction to the race. I know it went on for a little while, but I think it's important to set the scene on it. So I want to give you a little race recap. I have got a 15-minute video, so we'll see how we go for time on that. But I want to have a quick look at what I think were the key strategies leaving the race start. And also then we'll watch the video and then we'll have a look at the last 300 miles of racing, because just as a quick spoiler, 80 days of racing, never before have we seen so many boats. I think there were 6 boats within an hour of within a day of each other, maybe 8 boats finished within a day of each other. So it's been pretty tight. So I'm just going to try and flick to is that still sharing? Is that the tracking map that you can see now?
That's tracking map.
That's perfect. Okay, so this was the start, and this is the Bay of Biscay, and here we got Les Abdelon. I think that's a glitch. Yeah, no, he had to go back. He had a problem with his lock on the force day. But as you can see, these boats, so these are the fast boats at the top of the screen. These are all the foiling boats. They've got little wings coming off them, so they're the foilers. And you can see this wind pattern that we've got. So we've had a really fast reaching start out of Les Sables, very light, sort of 10, 12 knots, flat seas. These boats were fast. This boat down at the bottom here, Jean Le Cam, in an older generation boat, not as fast reaching, but he knew his strengths. He knew that if he sailed upwind and kept the boat going upwind, he would be fine. So in the flatter water, he just wanted to get off this way. The boats all wanted to go towards sort of this red area down here and off towards the bottom southwest of the screen. So if I just play this on, you'll see the boats here, this weather system is going to move through and all the boats are going to want to tack and head south. So you can see the foilers are starting to almost point in the wrong direction at this point, okay? They're sailing away from where they want to go. Jean Le Cam is still sailing in about the right direction here. Massive amount of extra miles sailed by the foilers, albeit faster. Now they've started tacking over. So that means the wind direction's finally changed for them. And they can start to come through. You'll see now the weather file's just changed. You can see they're still sort of going upwind. Jean Le Cam's about to tack. And now they're coming back upwind towards Cap Finisterre. And all this time, Le Cam's getting lifted. The foilers are coming a bit quicker, starting to get lifted, lighter air. But look at that. So that white line, Jean Le Cam, sailed the southerly route, knew that he got a different boat, so he sailed the strength of his boat. But look at the amount of miles difference he sailed there. Much less than the guys who went all the way up here and are still, they've got a bit more westing, so they've got a bit further over towards America, but he's still much further south and in a really nice position. So we'll just pull this on a little bit further. So then we were into, I think, night 3, and they talk about it in the video I'm going to show. So this was a big storm that was in the North Atlantic, and this weather front here. So this was a change in the weather. And as these foilers started to go out into this, they knew that this was going to be big weather. The weather forecast was 35 knots. And these guys in the slower boats, the older boats, decided, no, we're not going to push out into this really strong weather. We're going to keep going south. We think that we've got a better chance down here. So these guys got here. This 35 knot weather forecast became 50 knots. Okay, and the sea state became 5 to 7 meters. And this is where some of these foiling boats that were fast but new broke apart. They had some big breakages in here. L'Occitan had to turn around, Charal had to turn around, and Alex Thompson took some damage in this storm as well. So this is only 3 nights out into an 80-day race, and they've made this decision, and the weather file was slightly undercooked, and they paid the penalty. Jean Le Cam down here, an overall race winner in the end, Yannick Besthaven, took a more sedate southerly option, and actually they had to go through some of those winds. I think they had about 35 knots in the end, but they didn't have the sea state, and they came out, and look, the whole group was packed again together. And these guys that had taken the southern option, you've got to remember, it's a solo race, and they've given themselves a much easier time. They haven't had to go through the sail changes. They haven't had to go through the difficulties of trying to make food or repairs and all these sort of things. So these guys did a much nicer job. So I'm just going to try and bring up the video again. Okay.
So Miles, if we do the video, and just maybe if you just do the key bits you think are really good.
Yeah. I'll skip through any bits that I think are a bit. I tried to get, so I had about an hour and a half of footage, and I got it to 16 minutes. But okay, so here we go. So this was the race start.
33 skippers with around 24,000 miles ahead of them. And even though history suggests that around half of the fleet will be forced to retire before the finish, I'm pretty sure that once they got out on the water, all of them were relieved to be out there doing what they've been rehearsing for so long leading up to this event. There was 10 knots of breeze and flat water, so pretty perfect conditions. Unless, of course, you're looking to set a record to the equator. And given the fact that the early few days of this race were upwind, setting a new record on the first part of the race looked pretty unlikely. Instead, what a lot of the teams were looking at was the prospect of having to punch through a rather nasty looking front a couple of days into the race. Before the start, Alex Thompson had spoken of the potential for boat-breaking conditions. And when it came to it, many of the fleets saw up to 45 knots of wind and some big seas. And there were quite a few breakages.
And then as I approached the front, I knew it was going to get windy and I prepared for that, but I thought I was thinking 40 knots, but no. I had 53 knots. When normally you pass the front, I'd expect the wind to go down a bit and you'd be able to normally tack. That's what I planned to do, but unfortunately the wind never went down, so I had to tack in 40 knots, which took 2 attempts.
But the biggest news on the other side of this nasty front was that of race favourite Jeremy Bayo, who announced that he would have to return to the start at Les Sables d'Olonne after suffering rudder damage.
Not a good time yesterday. Something wasn't feeling very right, and I was checking around the boat and I found a problem in the bow, a structural problem, and it's fairly significant, and I will attempt to show you the repair now. It involves going through that that tiny little hole which I hardly fit through. But this central longitudinal is broken in several places. It's broken, you can see it cracked here. In fact, it's this taping's off the hull there. You can see it's broken here, the cap is broken here, it's broken all the way through here. It's also busted there, it's cracking here. Further up, we can see it's broken through here. So the good news is that we carry so much materials on board to fix this kind of thing, from C-plate, solid carbon, panels, and even girders. So we've got plenty of material to be able to fix it. The other good news is I'm not in the Southern Ocean. I'm in the middle of the St. Helena High, so I've got really good conditions to be able to do the job. And the other good news is I feel super positive and happy to crack on, get this job done, and get back in the race as soon as possible.
As always, the goal was to pick up the roaring 40s as quickly as possible and turn east for the Southern Ocean. But getting around the South Atlantic High proved very hard, as the complex and changeable weather provided numerous tactical hurdles for the fleet. Alex Thompson's pit stop had left Charlie Dallin aboard Apivia and Thomas Riant on Linked Out to lead the charge south. Both aboard new boats, they were hounded in third by the wily veteran Jean Le Cam on Yes We Can aboard a 13-year-old boat. Alex Thompson's troubles had allowed Thomas Riant to take the lead, but now he too joined Hugo Boss on the casualty list. Linked Out suffered damage to the port foil, leaving the French skipper the agonising decision as to whether to amputate the foil so early in the race. The high risk of further damage made the decision for him. Unperturbed, finding time to film the escapade too, Riant made advantage of a calmer patch and took his electric saw to the blade. He remains in second place. Meanwhile, Britain's Sam Davies continued to stay in touch with the leaders, remaining in the top 10 for almost 3 weeks. Back at the front of the fleet, rookie Charlie Dallin aboard Apivia has set the agenda. At one point, the 2019 Transact Jacques Vabre winner stretched out a 325-mile lead over Linked Out and maintained this lead going into the Southern Ocean, always a knot or two faster than his rival. The hugely experienced 61-year-old Jean Le Cam is renowned in France for his plain speaking. His boat won the 2008 Vendee Globe, but today it is from a different generation. No flying on foils, just a pair of traditional daggerboards for Le Cam. To be in third place on the water for more than a week is testament to his skills. Mind you, he does seem to have some extra help down below. But for Alex Thompson, the news had just got even worse, as a damaged rudder forced him to retire from the race. Thompson was devastated.
Well, it's taken me a few days to digest what's happened, gather my thoughts before I felt able to speak to you. I'm normally a very positive person, but if I'm honest right now, I feel pretty broken.
The Vendee Globe is notorious for its high attrition rate, and while the trip south had been kind on the fleet, 4 of the major breakdowns had been aboard the brand new boats. And then came the kind of news everyone dreads, that of a distress. Kevin Escoffier on PRB was around 800 nautical miles southwest of Cape Town in third place when he triggered his distress beacon on the afternoon of the 30th of November, reporting a serious ingress of water. Jean Le Cam diverted to the area and located Kevin in his life raft. Early reports suggested that big seas and 20 to 25 knot winds were hampering the rescue attempts. 3 other competitors were diverted to the area to help with the rescue. But after 2 in the morning in the region, good news came through. After more than 12 hours in the water, Kevin Escoffier was safely on board with Jean Le Cam. The Southern Ocean beckoned the Vendee Globe fleet, and the prospect of fast downwind speeds in the roaring 40s is why many subject themselves to this exhilarating punishment. Leading the female skippers was Britain's Sam Davies.
Just going to go to show you that sometimes you have nice days at the Southern Ocean. Just a little trip on deck. It's a bit wet, so I'm not going to stay long. It's nice, and it's a nice day out here. A bit chilly, but the sun's shining, so that makes it good. Clips on always.
Day 26. And disaster struck aboard the 11th place Sam Davies and Initiative Kerr. They collided with an unknown object whilst doing 20 knots, coming to a complete stop. Damage to the keel and surrounding structures had left Sam with no choice but to turn north and head for Cape Town, as the fleet spread out across the Indian Ocean, settling into the wild downwind ride that is the hallmark of this solo race. Chasing top 10 had narrowed the gap to the leading 3 boats as they reached the lighter winds first. The main loser was Charlie Dallin. Amphibia's lead more than halved as they passed the longitude of Cape Lewin.
2 out of 3 capes. It sounds like 2/3, but that's not right. We're at 44% or something like that. A couple of squalls still, a bit of rain, drizzle. It's pretty cold today, 7 degrees. What an incredible moment. 5 boats meeting in the Indian Ocean halfway around the world, just like this. Completely unheard of, I think. Pretty much identical speed all day. That's good.
The Roaring Forties occasionally lived up to its name for the spread-out fleet of single-handers, but so did the rarest of conditions, flat calms and warm, high-pressure conditions, unseen in this remotest part of the world. Out in front for almost a fortnight was Yannick Bessavant on Maître Coq, with early leader Charlie Dallin in second, having fixed his foil problem. Linked out was fourth, and rookie Damien Seguin third aboard Groupe Abyssale, the first 60 without the aid of foils. The Paralympic sailor was born without the use of a left hand. The chasing pack of Le Cam, Harriman and Josque ran the ice line, hoping for a better weather system, and repaired Louis Berton, lying to the north. In the winning boat from the previous Vendee, also hoped a following low-pressure system would shorten gaps to the leaders.
I'm just going to stop that there. I think it'll probably go on a bit long. So what I was going to do was just flick back into my race screen here. So we've just seen the guys, the fleet. They've gone past Good Hope. They are across the Southern Ocean, okay? They've gone past Cape Lewin. So let's pick them up about here. So you'll see this dark section on the tracker, and that is the ice limits. What happens is the race management, they have a company that specializes in using satellites to detect icebergs. And during this race, one of the largest icebergs ever seen broke off Antarctica and started heading towards the fleet a little bit. So this ice limit is basically, it's an exclusion zone that the boats aren't allowed to sail into, because there are lots of little icebergs around in these areas, and icebergs are a nightmare. So you just don't want to be sailing in there. So the race organizers now say, no, you can't go past this line. They have the power to change this line at any time. They just send an update to the boat and say you can't go any further south. What it does do is it actually makes the race course quite a bit longer, because you can imagine if you wanted to go around the world, the shortest way round would be to go right down and be as close as you can to Antarctica, and you sail the shortest distance round. But having to stay up a bit closer to Australia, quite normally, I mean, this was really high up here, this ice limit. Normally the boats come down and point straight at Kerguelen. So yeah, the ice limit was quite high. It looked very similar to the one we had in the Volvo. So the boats are trucking along in the Southern Ocean. Now this is where the boats are designed for. The winds are strong, but the seas are long, rolling seas. So it's not really boat breaking conditions typically in the Southern Ocean, because the seas aren't too choppy and aggressive, but it is strong winds. And the boats get set into a nice sort of setup. So you can see them moving down across the Southern Ocean and across the ice limit. You see some of these boats right on the ice limit. Sometimes they're jibing backwards and forwards off it. But remember, with these boats, they're solo. So a single jibe in your Fever or your Terror or your Oppie might take you 3 or 4 seconds. On one of these boats, solo, it takes about 45 minutes. Because you have to get the boat ready. You have to move all the equipment inside the boat. You have to get the rig all set up. You have to prepare everything meticulously so that if you know one thing goes wrong, you know exactly which rope you've got to let go of, and you've just got to get everything set up. And then the actual maneuver probably takes about 5-10 minutes to complete, but the setting up process, the getting ready for it and the cleaning up afterwards is about 45 minutes. So it's not something you want to do lots of. So here we go, boats just trucking along through the Southern Ocean. Point Nemo there. If anybody can remember on the chat, question is, what is Point Nemo? So if anybody remembers what Point Nemo is, answers on the chat, please. We'll see who gets that one right. I think I'll just pick up very quickly. So typically the Southern Ocean has loads of storms rolling down it, loads of low pressures rolling down it. And you pick up one and you get pushed along, and then it overtakes you, and then you pick up the next one and it pushes you along. This race, it had loads and loads of ridges of high pressure. So these light blue areas, and it just kept the boats really slow through the Southern Ocean. So their times from Cape Lewin to Cape Horn were pretty slow.
We have an answer. The most remote place on Earth, from Samuel.
Yes, it is the most remote place on Earth. The
closest place is the space station.
That's right. Your closest human being, if they're not on a yacht, is in the International Space Station. Even if they are in a yacht, the International Space Station is probably closer to you. So yeah, furthest, most isolated point on Earth. So as we got to Cape Horn, the last of the Great Capes before they start the slog back up the Atlantic, we've got Yannick Besthaven in the lead, but we can see he's got this blood red wind here. So 35, 37 knots in the weather forecast here. That probably means it was, in reality, it was 43, 44. He was doing really well. He was having an amazing race. And he did something that the French are very good at. He managed to break his boat. You can see his little tack off here. I was jibed there, sorry. And he had some problems with his boat, and he'd stuffed it into a wave, and he damaged the front of the boat. He damaged the bowsprit, the furlers, and it really limited the sails that he could use after this point, just after Cape Horn. So he had to sail all the way up the Atlantic to the finish without, I think it was 3 of his sails. So he was very restricted in what he could do, but he didn't tell anybody. He kept it a secret because he didn't want his competitors knowing. So he kept that a secret, and it was noted that he was a little bit slower and he was doing some different things to the other boats. So these 2 boats behind him, were sailing up, trying to catch up to him, and they were just sailing a little bit faster all the time. And he'd use this point here in some light airs here to try and make some repairs, but they didn't really work out for him. So it was a real battle coming all the way up the Atlantic. You can see back up in this pack of foilers here, we've got Damien Seguin. Damien is a Paralympic sailor. He was born without his left hand. So he's just gone around the world with the boat slightly adapted for him. He never, ever complains about anything. He's got, I think, 2 Paralympic gold medals. But Damien, there he was, up there leading the charge with the non-foiling boats. And Jean Le Cam, he's up there as well. So this lead group had pulled away up the Atlantic, and they were having to sail through different wind zones. They're coming up to the equator here, and in the equator we have something called the Doldrums, which is really light airs. And it's always a sticky patch, and it's the bit that you're kind of racing to get to try and get through, but you know there'll be a bit of a restart when you get there. As you can see, we didn't actually have a bad Doldrums crossing this race. There's a bit of a light patch out to the east of the boats, and you always look for where the best patch is going to be, and usually the weather files are pretty good and you can tell with the clouds. So the boats actually had quite a quick transition. So they stepped up back into the northern hemisphere, and look at this, we've still got a massive pack of boats. And they're not really extending. The new foilers start to extend away a little bit as they're reaching away in this winds, in these trade winds here. So this would be lovely sailing, clear skies, flat water, 20-knot winds, the best sailing of your life through there. And then we had the Azores High, which was always going to be able to block just off the Canaries. It's quite low. It should normally be sitting around here, but it had been pushed out by a storm. So this sort of slowed everybody down again. We had another restart into the finish. So everybody caught up again. Then we had another big storm coming across the Atlantic. Fortunately for these guys, there was lots of storms this winter. So we're coming into the finish, and this is unheard of what we've got right now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 boats all going to finish within 24 hours of each other at this point. So there are a few different options here. Now remember, we are 78 days into the race here. Every single one of these boats will have had breakages. Some of them worse than others, but none of them are sailing at 100% anymore. They've all got things going on. So this boat down here, Charlie Darling, he's got a broken foil. He wants to be on port tack if he can. This boat here, Boris Herman, he's doing all right. He's had a few issues with his mast, but he's all right. Linked Out, he's broken a foil. Bureau Valley, Louis Berton, he stopped in the Atlantic to fix some problems he had and nearly retired from the race. And here we have Yannick Bestaven, who, as we know, was the winner, but he's got major problems with the front of his boat and the sails that he can choose. So because he knows he's limited in the sails he can choose, he decides to sail off north and try and get into this storm where his smaller sails will be more useful. So here we go. We're coming in through the finish. Charlie Darling, he's coming this way. He wants the flatter water to make his foils work. Yannick's still all the way up here. Okay, but he's sailing in stronger winds. Thomas Ruin, he wants the winds as well because he's the one who's cut the tip of his foil off. Okay, so these guys are going to come in. And now we're not very far from the finish. And here we go. So here we are. 1, Charlie Darling, first to finish. 2, Louis Berton, second to finish. 3, looks like it's going to be Boris Herman. Right? And then you'd think 4, Thomas Ruin. 5, Yannick Bestaven. Boris Herman, about this point, hits a fishing trawler. So as he's coming in towards the finish, a fishing trawler just crops up in front of him, and he ends up hitting it and taking out a lot of the running rigging down the side of his boat and some of his sails. So his third place was kind of snatched from him within 100 miles of the finish. So he's just sailed 24,000 miles, 100 miles from the finish. He's knackered. He's absolutely shattered, you know. He's been surviving on 3 to 6 hours sleep a day for 79 days. And suddenly there's fishing boats all around them. So it's really tough. So as we see there, we just see the boats coming in. So Charlie Darling's in, Lewis Burton's in. And actually 5th to finish, I think, was Yannick Besthaven. But Yannick had been involved in that rescue that we talked about down off Cape Town. And so because he'd been and waited for the rescue, he had 6 hours credit given to him, so redress given to him. And he finished within 4 hours of Apiva. So he took the win on correction, having been involved in that rescue attempt, or successful rescue. So yeah, absolutely amazing finish, an amazing race, and different strategies at the end on which win to go for because of the way that their boats were set up. And I think that was one of the really interesting things for me, was you don't always know which boats have got what going on with them, but often there's different strategies. So I'm not certain whether Hugh's still with us.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, you are still there. So that's sort of my recap on the Vendee. It was a mega finish. I know I'm very conscious of time, and I could have gone on for hours, but there we are. And we've got the cup stuff to go through. So yeah, I'll now knock it on to the cup stuff, unless anybody's got any major questions.
Anybody got any questions? No? Okay, so Miles, what I think we'll do is let's just play. We'll do the first bit with the Matt's little update, but we maybe not need to go through all of that, and then maybe just the little bit of what the rate, one of those races, a tiny bit of that tracking, and then probably call it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the reason we're doing this is to give you guys an update for next weekend.
I hope you guys are doing well. I know it's still lockdown back there, tough times. I know we're going to do what we can to bring you guys some good cheer and something to celebrate if we can. This weekend we have the Prada Cup Final against the Italian team Luna Rossa, who are going to be a very difficult challenge. Jimmy Spithill, Francesco Bruni, these are the guys we've raced against in the past, and they're very talented, very tenacious, so we know we've got our work cut out. They certainly won't be a pushover. They've also, it seems like they made a bit of a gain in their performance, particularly in the lighter stuff. I think they could have a bit of an edge on us. I think the rest of the stuff, it could be pretty even, so it's not going to be easy, but we're up for the challenge. The guys have been working really hard here. We have made some changes. It's sort of been this last, it feels like an age actually since we've been racing, which is quite tough, and that's why everyone's really chomping at the bit to get back out there. But the focus has really been on the development side of things the last couple of weeks. Yeah, small changes, nothing too radical. We're happy with the package we've got, and we don't want to try too many things in this period, but some really important work's gone on. The guys have been working so hard. I can't emphasize how hard they've been working, and particularly when we're out sailing in the day. The boat doesn't get back till sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then by the time it's in the shed and they start their work list, particularly if we're sailing the next day, they often don't get their work finished until into the small hours. We often call it midnight marine. If you come in here at midnight, there's plenty of people here still working away on that boat. So the riggers, the boat builders, the systems guys, the sail makers, it's really tough on them. But it's really greatly appreciated by the rest of the team, and we have to make sure we show them that appreciation. They have to understand too that the sailors need their rest, but everyone's on the same page. We're all trying to help each other here. They want to get that boat in top shape for us to get it out in the water and for us to win those races. So everyone's invested so hard in this and really putting their blood, sweat and tears into it. What else have we been doing? We have still been kind of now in the latter stages. That was sort of first 2 weeks. This week we've really turned our attention back to racing. The sailing the guys have been doing out in the water has been more race focused. We've been analysing Luna Rossa in all sorts of areas. One of them, for example, being the pre-starts. We can see how their routines in the pre-starts. We can go into our simulator, and Ben and Giles race against each other in the virtual world in our simulator, and they try and match those pre-starts and figure out ways of trying to upset their routines and things like that. That's been really valuable. But yeah, everyone's really looking forward to this weekend. Like I said, it won't be easy. It's first to 7 wins, so it could take quite a while. I think there could be multiple wins for both teams, and there will be some bad days in there for us, unquestionably.
So just push it on one. Should we just go through to try and get race day 4, I think.
Focused on trying to
win. This is a video of the race day 4 which we had, which was basically when it was that we had our last match against the Italians. The key bit about this little bit of video is obviously this was a really tough race for the Brits, and there were multiple lead changes, and it's just a great way of you guys having a bit of an insight into how hard and what those guys were having to deal with.
And make it straight through to the Prada Cup Final.
From where we were 3-4 weeks ago, I'm just, again, so proud of the team for getting us where we are now, but we've still got a long way to go.
Race committee, we would like to request a delay, please.
Yeah, we're having a lot of issues with our Cunningham ramp, which really is what controls the power of the main saw. It's pretty critical control.
We are finally underway in round robin 3, race number 2. Luna Rossa, Ineos Team UK.
We're behind quite a few times, but we kept ourselves in the race.
This is tight though. There was nothing in this.
That last lap, Ben and Giles really kind of hooked it up into the right phase, and you know that last bottom right run and kind of got us straight onto the right tack, and the gains were always coming back to us from that point.
Gives Ineos the lead again. If they win this one, go directly to the Prada Cup Final. Absolutely nothing in it. Split gates and away we go.
It was a seriously close finish, you know, that last cross.
This is going to be tight.
They're in trouble on Prada.
It was absolutely touch and go, but absolutely amazing that we did it.
But we kept ourselves in the race and managed to get it right just on the line when it counts.
And that is an enormous win. And they go through to the Prada Cup Final.
It's one step in the journey to trying to win the America's Cup, but we've still got a long way to go and a lot of improvements that we need to make if we're going to be fast enough to win this thing.
So that basically put the guys in a great position, and we now have we then had the Luna Rossa guys sailed against the Americans and lost. So that then basically puts us with the Ineos Team UK now racing in this weekend in the final against Luna Rossa. And we've just got a couple of Miles. Should we do the bit that I showed, and we'll just fast forward that little video I did, so we can show the guys what the decision making is going on these boats.
Yep. Let's just try and.
So the reason we're doing this is, so this is the tracking, and all of you guys can get onto this. So if you look on the top left of your screen now, you can see the web address. If you go to americascup.com, EN Advanced Dashboard, as Miles is highlighting here, that's a really nice way for you guys to have a look and see what to follow the tracking of the race and follow all the information that's available. So I've just taken a little video of one of the races, which I think was race 2, which is when the Brits and the Luna Rossa raced. It's a really interesting race, and the reason I'm highlighting this because one of the things in our program at the Royal is about us making good decisions on the water, and this is a great example of how important a pre-race plan was for these guys.
Sorry.
So in this video, basically I just quickly talk through, but Miles, if you just do the slider, hopefully, then we can just fast track through it, and I'll just talk whilst you're doing that. So as the guys come off the start line, they realise that the Italians are too low for the start boat, and as they come off the line, then they're below the lay to the port end. Brits then lead,
below the low line,
and the plans that the Brits had was to try and get to the right-hand side of the racecourse. And if you watch, each time they come back to the Italians, they keep pushing to stay to the right-hand side.
They want the top right on the exit of the women mark.
Yeah, and on the downwind, again, they keep to the downwind left. But the tactician and the strategy they're playing is because they know that the right-hand side of the racecourse is favoured, and they do everything they can to try and lead to that side. That was very clear on their race plan.
Again, they give a little bit of the starboard advantage from the right halfway up, but then they get to the right at the top, which is when they want it. And again, same thing downwind. non-poor.
For me, this is a really key race in them showing how well tuned Giles and Ben and the guys doing all the thinking game and the boat are working out the decisions they're doing. And a little bit like we've done some stuff with Miles in the past on our meteorology, we basically, the more we have a plan of what to do and we can execute that plan, the more likelihood is of us actually being successful.
And then coming down the run. So very strategic in trying to keep protecting the side they think's the gaining side, which wins them the race.
So what's the learner for us here? Well, the learner is that going into this next kind of couple of days racing, this kind of weekend, they'll be doing a lot of time and effort, as Miles showed us on the Vendee Globe presentation, around the weather and knowing the course area and knowing the tide and being really, really focused on how that all is and what that impact is on a race. And Giles and Ben, as they said in a little bit of video earlier, will be spending a huge amount of time analysing how other people in the race, how the other boat races, and running through scenarios of what happens when they are going to approach the pre-start, so that they know which side they're going to want to win as they come off the start line. And this weekend, you'll see some real close pre-start aggressive match racing moves. So, really be really good for you guys to dial into that website and have a look at this tracker for having a look at some of the learning. And Miles, maybe we've just got a little bit of time now to, if there's one of the other videos you think would be appropriate for us to flick onto, we can kind of wrap up with something.
Actually, let's just go with the Mercedes one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Talk about.
I remember the first time we went up to Brackley, I think two things really stuck out. I think firstly their ethos, really, how they approached the challenge, the technical challenge, and how collaborative they were. And then secondly, just frankly, the awestruck by the resources at hand for our team. How clearly we could benefit massively from that.
What we've been able to bring to the party is horsepower. Ineos is a very capable team, and one of the strengths of the Mercedes Formula One team is it's got a lot of capability built up over a number of years. We've really been able to blend with Ineos and help them turn their ambition into reality.
The simulations we use to understand and develop the performance of the car is very similar to that they use on the boat. So it's a very natural area for us to collaborate in. More of that is of course the physics model. So we've been improving the physics in the model. As you add higher fidelity physics into the model, the computational cost is increased. So another area where we've been heavily involved is improving the computational efficiency and runtime of those simulations.
And some of these parts here we can see are what we've been making. So this typical example here is a manifold. I believe this is on the boat. It's a pump manifold. Lead time we believe was 6 weeks to make that, but I think we came in under at 4 weeks.
And one of the roles that we took on was improved reliability and testing, and this rig that we see here was constructed to test this part before it goes on the boat, and we needed to be certain of its reliability.
This is a gearbox to transfer drive from the sailors, turning handles on the pedestals through to the winch. And there's some complexity around the way that is done on the yacht at present. The initial idea came from Ineos, but we've been able to produce something that simplifies that for them by including an additional mechanism inside the gearbox. We're able to take the part from design, analysis, manufacture, inspection, through to getting something that we've now built and started testing, and so far everybody seems happy with it.
Mercedes have given us a huge leg up. They've taken the underpinnings of what we've started, and they've added a layer of sophistication and detail to it, which has been phenomenal.
There we go, Formula One cars and rally cars.
So it's all teeing up this weekend for being an absolutely amazing sporting spectacle. And we have obviously heard from Matt Cornwell tonight about how much effort the team's been putting into their preparation for this weekend's racing. This weekend is the first of 2 weekends, I think I'm right, Miles, of Prada Cup racing that goes on, and no, more than 2, sorry.
Yeah,
we basically have, it's the 1st to 7, first team to 7 wins, and they have 3 weekends worth of racing, and there are multiple races each day. So we will be following this closely as obviously the yacht club and on behalf of you guys, and we'll be getting regular updates from the team. But I think the key thing for us in our learning and understanding what's going on with these races is helping take on board some of the science and some of the foiling and all those new technical areas, which are things that in the future you're going to be racing around in foiling boats. So when you're listening to some of the racing and you're hearing some of these things, it's really, really good for you to start understanding about how the foils work and doing some research on it. So we'd be really pleased and really encourage you guys to think of any questions you've got. If we have any questions now, we're happy to answer them. But if you've got any other ones that need some technical expertise, then we'll forward those on to the team and get some replies back. I know it's been quite a lot of, we've had quite a lot of different input in the talk today, but hopefully you can see that, technology is really driving our sport, and it's a very good skill to have, to be technical in our sport. And Miles said this to me the other day, every one of the pro sailors on the Ineos team and on the Vendee Globe boats has to be multi-skilled. So you guys doing your physics, doing your maths, doing all your technical aspects of your schoolwork makes a huge difference for you in the future. I think that really wraps us up. There are more videos in the future which we could help you with and provide links for, but for now, we've been on the phone for an hour, so we're going to cut it short there. Are there any questions or any things that you want to understand a bit better that we can help with on the chat, or unmute yourselves and ask? No? Good. Fine. I realise it's been a bit of a download, but hopefully that's given you an insight, and we'll try and provide a little bit more. The talk for next week, I'm trying to just get finally lined up with Nick Thompson to help us have an insight into what goes on once you come out of the Olympic program and career path. And we will also try and do a little update on the America's Cup, but we'll have some career path opportunities and insights from Nick for next week, hopefully. And then, fingers crossed, by the time we get into March, you guys might be doing some sailing. Anything else? Any questions? Any queries? Or is everybody happy? Cool. Miles, I'd like to say a massive thank you for that effort going into that presentation before. And Rafi, thanks for letting your dad help us with that. It's been brilliant.
That's good fun. I hope everybody enjoyed it. It got cut short a little bit, but it's one of those, as I say, I could talk about it forever because there's a million things in there. And I think one of the things that we always talk about, and we're going to talk about with you when you're coaching, is we talk about the tactics of a race. I always think as there's tactics and strategy. Strategy is everything to do with the wind and the tides, and tactics is boat on boat. And the Vendee is very strategic. And also the Cup, as we're just seeing there, it's very strategic, being on the right side of the race course, getting your weather forecast right, your tide forecast, get your strategy right, and then deal with the boats around you. So yeah, very interesting. 2 races, 2 great races. We're lucky to have gone through them, and hopefully next time they come around, you'll all be a bit older and you'll get into them a bit more.
Involved.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Have a nice evening. lovely to see you. The recording of this will get put on the website, on the Talks page as per normal. And I'd just like to invite you all to unmute and give Miles a real round of applause for his efforts. Thanks, Miles.
Very much.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And please do also on social media wish Ineos Team UK the very best in their competition this weekend.